Proposed integrated theatre commands, what we know so far. Sources within the services and the Defense Ministry have mentioned that while the Army and the Navy are on board with the proposals, the Air Force has certain reservations. Chief of Defense Staff General Bipin Rawat held a meeting this week with the Vice Chiefs of the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, and representatives of the Ministries of Home and Finance, National Security Council, Integrated Defense Staff, and Department of Defense, among others. The meeting was held in the backdrop of concern about the proposed model of the Integrated Theatre Command, both within the services and outside, as it involves paramilitary forces as well. What are Integrated Theatre Commands? In the simplest words, it is a unified command under which all the resources of the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force are pooled, depending on the threat perception. The commands could be geographical, like looking at a border with a particular country, or thematic, like a command for all maritime threats. Several nations in the world have theater commands, including the United States and China. Is theater command a new idea? The idea of creating an integrated tri-services command in India is not new. It had been recommended at various levels after the Kargil conflict. When General Rawat was appointed Chief of Defense Staff in January 2020 with a mandate to raise such commands within his 3-year tenure, the idea was finally brought to the design table. But after his appointment, General Rawat has commissioned studies within each of the armed forces to come up with the ideas of what these commands could look like. These were headed by Vice Chiefs of the forces. Last year, General Rawat had suggested that the first of these commands, the Air Defense Command, could come up at the end of 2020. However, the process has been delayed due to multiple factors, including the COVID-19 pandemic. Officials are now suggesting that some of the new commands could be rolled out by the end of this year. So what is the proposal under discussion? A model with 4 to 5 integrated tri-service theatre command is under discussion, with each command headed by a 3-star officer. This officer, the theatre command, will report to the Chief of Staff Committee COSC, which, as the name suggests, includes 3 services chiefs and is headed by the CDS as its permanent chairman. This brings in a major change. The service chiefs currently have all the operational control over their forces. Operational powers will now move to the COSC. Each of these commands will have the needed assets from all the 3 forces. Operational control over all of these assets, regardless of the force, will lie with the commander of that theatre. The proposed commands are a Maritime Theatre Command, which will take care of all the maritime security needs of the country on both the eastern and the western seaboards, and will include airstrike assets and amphibian forces of the Army. An Air Defense Command, which will be mandated with air defense across the country and beyond. The fighter jets will have reconnaissance and surveillance assets as well. 2 or 3 land-based commands are proposed. If there are 2 commands, there will be 1 each for India's border with China and Pakistan. But there is also a proposal to have another command looking at India's border with Pakistan and China in Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, given the unique territory and security needs of the country in that region. A final decision is yet to be taken. Last year, General Rawat had stated that apart from these 3 theatre commands, there will be 2 functions, Tri-Services Command as well. There will be a Logistics Command, which will have the logistics of all the services under one person, and there will be a Training and Doctrine Command, so that all services work under a common doctrine and have some basic common training. What will be the role of the services if not operational? As of now, the services have to speak to each other in times of need and urgency to request their asset to conduct a particular operation. The proposal is to have a theatre commander who will have operational control of the assets. under his command, thus enhancing jointness among the forces and also reducing duplication of resources. However, this would leave the service chiefs with no direct control over their assets operationally. This does not mean their role will be made redundant. Now the service will have the core task to raise, train and sustain their respective forces. Also, as each chief will be a member of the COSC and expert of his or her domain, his or her inputs will be necessary for all operational decisions. Is everybody happy with the proposed idea? Sources within the Services and Defense Ministry have mentioned that while the Army and the Navy are on board with the proposal, the Air Force has certain reservations. 1. The Air Force does not want the Air Force Chief to lose operational control of air assets, according to the sources. 2. The Air Force is concerned that all of its assets might be divided within these integrated theatres. To iron out all such differences and concern, a committee of the vice chiefs of 3 services was set up last week and the CDS had met them. Sources in the Air Force said that all such concerns need to be addressed before such a significant transformation of the defense setup takes place. How many commands are there now? Are any of them tri-service commands? As of now, 3 forces have 17 commands between them. The Army has 7 commands: Northern, Eastern, Southern, Western, Central, Southwestern and Army Training Command. The Air Force has 7 as well: Western, Eastern, Southern, Southern-Western, Central Training and Maintenance Commands. The Navy has 3: Western, Eastern and Southern, of which Southern is largely about training. Even if these commands operate in the same region, they are not co-located and their areas of operational responsibility are not necessarily the same. There are 2 existing tri-services commands as well: the Andaman and Nicobar Command, which is headed by rotation by officers from 3 services, and the Strategic Force Command, which is responsible for India's nuclear assets. Thank you.